Hey guys, what's up? It's me, Thomas. Today we're back here with Green Scorpion again. So, not sure if this is the last of Monster Month, but I'll keep an eye out. We got the top 10 video game monster hunters. Yep, these basically take on the creatures of the night and hunt them down. So, I think the biggest one I know was Dante, though I think he's more demon than regular monsters. But they do come in shapes and sizes, like, I guess that counts? Other than that, I don't know. I'm actually kind of curious to see who's going to qualify, so let's hop in and see who's the best at monster hunting. If you totally like Scruff and more, hope you enjoy. Here we go. Here we go. Time to begin.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Here we go. Go. Begin. Time for the hunt.
Greetings, Night Watchers and Day Walkers, the Green Scorpion here, and in the past 3 countdowns, we've covered some less traditional ideas of monsters, going from infernal fiends to misguided monster makers, and finally golems who are as much monsters as they are unwilling weapons.
Demons, the mad
All of
scientist,
this was to lead us to the point where we hit the completely opposite trope, the monster hunter. I'd say most games have monsters in some variety, and by extension, most video game heroes will have to fight monsters at one point or another. Some, however, build their entire identity around being an expert exterminator of the extraordinary, a predator of the paranormal, a slayer of the supernatural. I actually first got this idea from playing Jackbox of all things.
Really?
In the game Monster Seeking Monster, one of the many secret roles you can receive is Monster Hunter, who despite his title is mixed in with all the classic movie monsters. That got me thinking. Dracula is one of the most famous monsters in all of literature and film, and that story also introduced Abraham Van Helsing. So for as long as the modern vampire trope has existed, so too has the monster hunter trope. They're usually a person of humble origin, or a badass normie who had a formative encounter with a monster at a young age. So like a specialized Batman, they devote their life to the extinction of that specific creature. Or occasionally, they're born into the world of monsters, either taking up the family mantle of monsterology or rebelling against their own bestial nature. They can work as mercenaries or specialized parts of law enforcement, and they can major in a certain type of opponent or cover a wide variety of beasts. Either way works. You can expect them to carry all manner of weapons and implements specific to their chosen prey. Oaken stakes for vampires, silver for werewolves, fire for the undead, blessed swords for dragons, or even spells designed against their specific target. The quarry does not matter, so long as it's not something that you'd see in the Museum of Natural History. Maybe something you'd see on the History Channel, though. Those guys are stranger than fiction nowadays. And morally speaking, there are 2 ways that a monster hunter can play out. One is the idea that to hunt a monster, you must become one. These are usually anti-heroes who are so Machiavellian in their pursuits that they're as dangerous to society as the creatures they chase off. On the other hand, some paragons of the vocation will rise above this evil and instead be a true shield of the people, such as a holy paladin when the trope is played straight. Both are interesting to me, and I'll likely bounce back and forth between the 2, but what matters is how good they are at what they do, and how pivotal they are as an element in their game and story. So get inside and bar your windows, because the hunt is about to begin. These are my top 10 video game monster hunters.
Alright, first up.
So here's a question that's probably on some people's minds. Do Pokemon trainers count as monster hunters? Pocket monster hunters.
I mean,
yes, and we almost had one, but they got bumped off when I remembered a character that you'll see later on. Despite fighting with and against the best bestiary in all of fiction, Pokemon Society has basically made capturing ghosts and dragons incredibly convenient, downright commodious, therefore removing that sense of danger. So hats off instead to Ray and Akari from Legends Arceus for doing this in an era before all that. But our number 10 spot goes to a series with a monster hunting mechanic not unlike Pokemon, but puts that into an otherwise more traditional fantasy setting. Octopath Traveler. Octopath Traveler 1 introduces the Huntress class with Hanit, a young woman from a remote village. With bow in hand and a faithful snow leopard at her side, Honey trains under the tutelage of her village master to learn the ways of tracking and trapping, all with the goal of maintaining the balance of nature. She has maybe my favorite intro chapter in the game. Hani is tasked with defeating Gisarma, this giant rabid bush baby looking motherfucker that's moved in and is killing all the local animals. This sets the scene for all kinds of beasts that you'll be staring down on your adventure, but also why you'll be staring them down in the first place. With her ability to read animals by body language, Hani quickly determines that Gisarma is acting out of fear and desperation, having been driven from their rightful environment by an even bigger monster. This beast, your ultimate target, is Red Eye, a malignant abomination created from dark magic gone wrong, which can mass petrify entire ecosystems and is the same monster Hanit's master left to go hunt a year prior, never to return. So right off the bat, not only does Hanit get to show her battle prowess, she also displays her compassion for nature, including the very animals that she takes down to preserve it. Hanit's empathy for creatures helps her not only trap, but also befriend the many monsters of her world. Any non-humanoid beast, including many bosses, can be whittled down to low health and then captured, adding them to Hanit's roster and letting you call them out later like summons to use a special attack. So in addition to her own bow and axe skills, Hanit's essentially a Pokemon trainer. It can be a bit annoying to manage, as animals she's captured have limited uses before they return to the wild, so this can lead to the Resident Evil rocket launcher paradox where you're too afraid to use your best moves at times, but trust me, go wild. You'll be very glad you did. Hani can also use her pets outside of battle to provoke fights with NPCs. This rightfully can hurt your reputation in town if you fail, but it's funny nonetheless. So great number 10, right? Well, hold on to your hippogriffs, partner, because we still have Octopath Traveler 2 to consider. With our new cast of characters inheriting the same jobs as the first game, here we get Ochette, who takes the hunter characterization in a different direction. Ochette is a beastling, a Laguz-like step between human and animal, which makes her perfectly suited as a bridge between the two. While other beastlings are wary of normal humans and humans fearful of them, Ochette has an unfailing friendliness towards everyone she meets, be they sentient creatures or supernatural animals. This arguably makes her better suited to capture and befriend monsters because she's practically one herself. That could explain why the monster taming system is more refined in the sequel, with some quality of life improvements like an increased chance to recapture monsters that you've caught before. But Ochette has also studied hunting under a human master, and so learns to make the same kind of nets and snap traps that Hani can use. Like Hani with Red Eye, Ochette has her own big bad monster that she needs to prepare for, a Darkling from the Sorrowful Moon. And I'm not going to show you what it looks like because the moment it finally shows up is extremely powerful, so I don't want to spoil it for you. But unlike Hanit, Ochette doesn't follow her main target. Instead, she's tasked with gathering the 3 sacred beasts that can hopefully help her repel the ultimate evil. So yeah, that's right, Ochette is hunting legendaries. So yeah, just as monsters and humans must share the planet, I'm gonna say that Hani and Ochette share the number 10 spot. Like, sure, the improved mechanics and the general power creep make Ochette the better party member than Hanit, especially with her latent power animal instincts. But Hanit also appears alongside her fellow Octopath Traveler 1 veterans for a super boss fight in the sequel, and she'll shower your party in arrows pretty darn quickly. These two may not have those Van Helsing vibes I was talking about in the intro, which is why I'm keeping them a little lower, but I find them good baseline examples for this topic with the kind of skills I'd expect from a monster specialist ranger. And I love how their stories approach the topic of ethical hunting. Octopath Traveler doesn't draw a hard line between natural animals and evil monsters. It's often up to the hunters to decide which populations to maintain and which to cull. Their job isn't just to kill mean things. If that's all they did, I don't think Hanit would have such a meaningful camaraderie with Linde the Snow Leopard, or Ochette with insert player's chosen partner here. Like hunting in the real world, it doesn't have to put you at odds with nature. Rather, it can make you a part of it. Sometimes it's necessary to preserve the environment through study, relocation, and sometimes hunting over abundant species. It's kind of like in 1995 when gray wolves were reintroduced into Yellowstone Park to revitalize the ecosystem, and it worked wonders. The herbivore population was brought under control, plant life grew back, trees grew easier, and dozens of species were delisted from the endangered list because they were no longer in peril of extinction. And that's the sentiment that these two bring to the table, with Hanit acting as a warden of nature and Ochette acting as an ambassador between nature and civilization. It's thanks to them that their magical realms can stay magical.
Now let's grab some food.
You ain't wrong there, so gotta give credit. I don't like that about the nature.
If it's monsters you're after, you'll have your pick of the litter in the Forgotten Realms of Faerun. And let me clarify again, any character who originated in a Dungeons & Dragons book or movie would be ineligible for a list about video game characters. but any personality who first appeared in, say, Baldur's Gate 3 is a-okay with me. Not long after your escape from the Mind Flayer ship, a fledgling adventurer might stumble their way into a goblin ambush, only to be assisted by a dashing hero, and he makes quite an entrance.
Oh!
Damnable roach! Provoke the blade!
Ooh! Bye!
Suffer its sting.
This is Will Ravengard,
Hey, Will.
known across the lands as the Blade of Frontiers, and it's his vow to fight injustice and hunt monsters wherever they may go. Alright, sweet. I've built this kind of D&D character before. Put some levels in the Ranger class, get your tracking skills, Hunter's Mark, obviously. Oh, and he says he particularly hunts devils. Okay, favorite enemy then. Alright, let's get out there and... Did he just cast Eldritch Blast?
I think so.
That's not a Ranger spell. That's not a Ranger spell at all.
What?
Yeah, so while Will wants to protect the homeland he loves, he does so by becoming a warlock, making a pact with a sultry devil named Mizora. Okay, a little counterintuitive, but like I said in the intro, it's a common trope for hunters of monsters to become a little monstrous themselves and rely on that same power. Mizora not only empowers Will with magic, including the best offensive cantrip in the game, she also gives him the mission to slay other devils, so it's kind of a win-win. That makes Will the first demon hunting specialist on this list, though far from the last.
Yeah,
Evil
true.
patron aside, Will is a quintessential good boy, a heroic prince straight out of a fairy
He
tale, and
lawful
will
good,
often use the stories he grew up with to relate to others and the world around him. Still a bit disappointed that he's not a ranger though, D&D's least favorite class. Seriously, the only other party member that starts as ranger is Minsk, but that dude is built more like a barbarian if you ask me. I suppose you could always reclass Will if you want, though Mizora might have something to say about that. He has a handy baked-in proficiency with rapiers, so he'll have decent dexterity melee damage, so no matter how you build him, he'll maintain this kind of swashbuckling defender of the road motif. And he's just a joy to be around, even when things get a little dark for him. Like, despite the clear aptitude for the outdoors and life on the frontier, you can also learn about his well-to-do upbringing that clearly rubbed off on him. He was raised on a ton of fairy tales that clearly inform how he views the world. He really wants to be a dashing prince, a musketeer, a scarlet pimpernel that swoops in and saves the day. But Will's worldview of good versus evil is quickly challenged when it turns out that Karlach, the tiefling that he's been tasked to slay, is actually an innocent bystander. Will realizes that not all devils deserve to be hunted, but if you advise him to refuse Mizora's order to kill Karlach, Mizora punishes him with a hellish new form.
Whoa.
Now you're the monster, Will, at least by your prior definition of monster. Will's story often gets criticized by fans for being underbaked compared to the other Origin party members, but what we get is a sympathetic story of a man who, in order to defend his home, is slowly isolated from it. Will's father, a staunch politician, exiles Will for his pact with Mizora without even understanding why Will made it in the first place. And Will takes a lot of time to come to terms with his new Cambion form. But with your help, Will can reflect on his hardships and work to break his pact with Mizora, and eventually return to the fight for good, now as the Blade of Avernus. He still vows to strike fear in the hearts of devils everywhere, but now with a better understanding of what that means, a willingness to hear out creatures that might not fit his assumptions on good and evil, and experience in politicking through a devil's dastardly deals when a mere sword won't get the job done. Baldur's Gate 3 has no shortage of lovable companions, but if you choose to bring Will, he'll bring some much needed levity to the group. He is one hell of a guy.
Remember that. I really gotta try that game. Anyway, number 8. Let's see if I can.
On the topic of video games based on D&D,
Hello, World of
albeit less
Warcraft.
directly, let's talk about Warcraft. The lore of Azeroth and the worlds beyond it are incredibly dense, which makes the thought of describing a 10,000-year-old night elf pretty daunting. So yeah, next up we have Illidan Stormrage. Illidan's multi-millennial life is separated into several eras, but one goal remains constant: don't let the demons win. It's a seemingly uncontroversial opinion, but the lengths he will go to defend Azeroth have put him at odds with his allies. As a night elf, Illidan was taught to respect the Well of Eternity, a spring from which the elves draw their magic. His brother Malfurion would train to become one of the greatest druids in history, and Illidan was supposedly ordained for his own monumental destiny, denoted by his amber eyes, which are a sign of greatness. So when the Burning Legion arrived, Illidan was certain that this would be his time to shine, which it was. Demons love to get into people's heads, and there's nothing better for that than a love triangle. When Illidan's lifelong crush chose to marry Malfurion instead of him, Illidan began to cozy up to the demons. The demon warlord Sargeras rewarded Illidan with new magical eyes of fire, giving him sight so strong that he could see all forms of magic and even read into people's souls to spy on their true intentions.
Eesh.
This is why he's often seen wearing a blindfold, as a way to dampen the vast amount of information that he's taking in at all times. But all of this was just a ploy by Illidan to defeat the demons by making a second Well of Eternity and using its energy to destroy the Burning Legion's portal, cutting off the invasion. From this point, Illidan declared himself a demon hunter, but the elves had another name for him: the Betrayer. The damage to Illidan's reputation was already done, and although he ultimately saved the world, his tampering with the well was a crime punishable by lifetime imprisonment. At least until Warcraft 3. 10,000 years of incarceration later, Illidan is sprung from jail when demons are once again invading Azeroth, because apparently only he has the demon fighting know-how to achieve victory. And Illidan quickly proves his value to the cause by drinking from the skull of Gul'dan and becoming a demon himself. Fight fire with fire, fight demon with demon, I guess. Even his signature weapons, the Warglaives of Azeroth, were stolen from a greater demon that he bested in the last war, which he can now materialize in his hands at any time. Illidan once again played both sides of the war, pretending to work with Kil'jaeden while fighting the forces of the Lich King, and hoping to eventually backstab him, but he lost a fight to Arthas, and now all of his homies hated him. So he ended up escaping through a portal to the world of the Outland, taking it over as his own base of operations. At this time in the continuity, Illidan is firmly in the category of monster hunters who are just as dangerous as the monsters themselves. The path to hell is paved with his good intentions, and in the Black Temple quest, you and a raiding party have to infiltrate his base to take him down. And he's no slouch. He's collected fire and darkness spells that can burn even demons, and it turns out that they work great on non-demons too. Special shout out to the parasitic Shadow Fiends, an otherworldly species that he's weaponized. Maya the Huntress deals a killing blow to Illidan, with which Illidan gives the famous line,
But the Huntress is nothing without the hunt. You are nothing without me.
A great last burn, but I also think that Illidan is projecting a bit. He sacrificed himself, body and soul, to hunt demons. If he didn't have the demons to fight, I don't think Illidan would know who he is. That quest dropped in 2007, and since then, Illidan's become more of an anti-hero, because of course they brought him back to life. He also was nearly forcibly given divine power before refusing it because he no longer believes in chosen ones, and he eventually becomes the jailer for Big Bad Sargeras. And while he was stark raving mad during the Burning Legion expansion, you gotta understand that we're seeing Illidan from a limited point of view. Plenty of stories and lore have since come to light of the many good things that Illidan did while presiding as the ruler of Outland. He trained the Illidari, a new order of demon hunters that follow in his footsteps. He took a proactive approach in traveling to other demon-conquered worlds and slaying other bigwigs in the demon cosmology. He even used some vials of water from the Well of Eternity to make his own energy shrine within the Black Temple, with which he was able to recruit demons away from the Burning Legion by offering them a source of sustenance outside of the fell magic that they were addicted to. Illidan was reforming demons.
Look at that.
And yeah, his track record is full of failures. Failure to stop the Lich King, failure to reconcile with his brother, failure to reconsider the danger that he put others in. But let's be fair here. This dude had demons in his head. They manipulated him and his loved ones to isolate one another, and the fact that he did so much to fight the darkness in spite of this is extremely admirable. And I think this can be best summed up in his relationship with fellow hunter Corvus Bloodthorn. Doubting him, she asks what the difference is between him and the demons he fights, if both are equally destructive. And in time, Illidan gives an answer.
They will stop at nothing to destroy our world.
And in time, Corvus learns the other half.
And we will sacrifice everything to save it.
Now, you are prepared.
Man, sacrificing everything to protect the world. Yeah, that does sound like him in a nutshell, and his people. You gotta give him credit. The fact that he, like, still did all this. I'm not sure how much he did willingly or was coerced to, but still, he definitely made his way through it all. And, well, most of us will regret our choices, but here, I don't think there's a shred of regret. You know? He did his job, he protected the world, and he did whatever he could to save the day. At least that's how I see it, but what do you guys think? Anyway, next. Number 7.
Hitting the proverbial turkey, at
Oh,
number 6
here
we
we
have
go.
a third demon hunter. But not just a demon hunter, but a demon hunter. And as we've declared, one of the best demons in gaming.
Yep.
Let's get this party
Let's
started.
Yep. Hi, Dante. Woohoo!
Yeah, that's right, Dante's back for an encore this month. And since I gave him so much love in Top 10 Demons, I'm gonna cut this expedition short.
Fair
Half
enough.
human, half demon, starts a freelance hunting business to protect other families from the kind of disaster that lost him his mother. Kind of the opposite approach to Will and Illidan if you think about it. They were both men, one human, one night elf, who harnessed devil power to fight other devils. Dante is born with his devil genes, but instead harnesses human ingenuity and compassion to bash in the Beelzebubs and murder the Mephistos.
Pretty much.
But rather than focusing on his upbringing, today I want to focus more on that patented fighting style that defined an entire subgenre of action games.
True.
Character action, spectacle fighter, hack and slash, whatever you want to call it. Devil May Cry calcified this style of gameplay into one about fighting difficult enemies and making it look
Slick
easy.
skills.
Devil May Cry 1 introduced a scoring system ranging from dull to awesome to
Stylish!
and in Devil May Cry 5, smoking
60 style.
Dante increases his rank in battle by keeping up chains of attacks, varying those attacks, and avoiding damage. And I don't think that's just a game abstraction. I like to think that this is what goes through Dante's head when he's fighting the forces of evil. The man is nigh unkillable and is always looking to entertain himself. Probably so
Sure.
he doesn't have to think about his growing list of family trauma. It's not enough to beat up the griffins and infernal tarantulas. No,
Gotta look
Dante
good while
needs to
doing it.
embarrass them by keeping a flow that will impress the judges in Olympic ass-kicking. That sense of flow is what set
Hey,
the stage
Bayonetta.
for Bayonetta to fight angels, Kratos to fight Greek beasts, Ryu Hayabusa to fight mutants, and to an extent even Sora to fight Heartless. It's a pretty good scoring system, and Dante was the perfect character to introduce that system to the masses. A guy who seeks fun through mastery and encourages the player to do the same.
True.
Now, a monster hunter is nothing without their tools, and Dante has one of the most eccentric armories in video game history. Many of them being demons molted into the shape of a weapon.
That's
Take, for
demon
example, Agni and Rudra, beasts of fire and wind that beg to be his swords after Dante bested them in combat. And Dante
So,
allowed
Bonk
them
some-
on the
stop
condition that they
talking.
never speak again, which feels kind of petty, but okay. Then
Yeah,
there's
fair. I'd
Nevin,
probably
a
get
lightning
annoyed.
witch that Dante turned into a spark-shooting electric guitar. Why? Because it's cool. And if it's cool, Dante can be more motivated and therefore fight better. I've said before that by Devil May Cry 4, Dante's character arc is basically complete and now he's just trying to be a badass. And I've since reconsidered that statement. Yes, he's reached closure over his family, but Devil May Cry 5 cleverly shows us how he still has room to grow. Dante will go to any lengths to help innocent people, but at the expense of becoming more closed off, essentially losing the ability to open his heart to other people. This could explain his seemingly out-of-character seriousness
Yeah,
in Devil
what?
May Cry 2, and in 4, I think that fun-loving, hard-fighting attitude is something of a facade. A mask.
Okay, that actually does explain a lot. Okay, so from what I remember in the games, or at least the timeline-wise, it's 3 first, then 1, then 2, 4, then 5. Remember, 3 is first one, where we actually see the Dante we all know and love, right? But 1 and 2, completely different, closed off. You know, not the fun-loving jokester we know, right? In a way, I think with what's going on here, sounds like he does still close himself off, even unintentionally. It's actually pretty interesting when you think of it like that. What do you guys think? You agree? Disagree? Let me know. But honestly, like I said, it feels like that's where it's going, or was going, but anyway.
That he uses to protect himself from really feeling his emotions. That is until he meets his nephew Nero, and that mask starts to crack a little. In the end, it takes Nero, a kid who hasn't lost all hope yet, to convince Dante and Virgil to
Yeah,
stop
knock it off.
stabbing each other for a moment and actually talk things out for a change. So while it's admirable
Yeah,
that
true.
Dante
And
would drop
Nero
everything
actually
to help people
backhanded
with a haunted island or a
Dante.
haunted
Just-
tower or a
he tried
haunted
to stop.
tree,
Hey,
the hunting and fighting is also something that Dante uses to keep himself from growing. and I think that's a really novel direction for Devil May Cry 5 to take. But it also goes to show that no matter how much emotional turmoil Dante's in, he's gonna give the demons of hell some serious trouble. Let's face it, we don't really remember Mundus or Arkham too well as villains because these all-powerful demon lords are just the monster of the week for Dante and his beautiful ivory-haired family.
Don't you dare say it!
Jackpot! He said it.
As I mentioned in the intro, it was Van Helsing from Bram Stoker's Dracula who codified the trope of a monster hunter in fiction for us. And since then, one of the most popular specializations is to hunt vampires. Marvel Comics' Blade, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Rain from Blood Rain. Hell, Abraham Lincoln was even imagined as a stake-carrying defender of the night. And of course, when it comes to video games, we think Castlevania. While other vampires slip in and out of the series, Dracula is a special case, reaching a level of power so great that he was able to make a pact with death itself, and now returns every 100 years to rebuild his aberrant army from within his magical mobile mansion. Keeping Dracula at bay is more than a lifetime commitment. It requires an entire bloodline of practiced slayers, always ready for his return. So rather than choose just one of the Belmont clan, I decided to dedicate the number 6 spot to the entire family. It's the legacy of this family's devotion that makes him so compelling, and the legacy begins with Leon Belmont in 1094 AD. Formerly an inquisitor, Leon left the church to pursue a vampire named Walter Bernard after his fiancée Sarah was kidnapped. Sarah perishes, but Leon is able to bind her soul to a weapon, forging the legendary whip, the Vampire Killer, with the power to...
kill vampires.
Kill vampires.
It's in the name.
As Bionic Commando taught us, the best weapons are built from our loved ones. Leon defeats the vampire only for his friend and ally Matthias to steal Bernard's power, eventually renaming himself as Count Vladimir Dracula Tepesh, and starting a millennium-spanning rivalry between Dracula and all of Leon's descendants. These descendants include Trevor Belmont, the first to take down Dracula as Dracula in 1476, and in doing so also found allies for the clan by meeting with mage extraordinaire Sypha Belnades, the cunning rogue Grant Dynasty, and Drax's own disgruntled son Alucard. Christopher Belmont, who goes on to discover Dracula's 100-year resurrection plan and also saves his own son from being a Dracula-possessed monster in a crappy Game Boy title. Simon Belmont, who headlined the first game set in 1691, ripped Dracula apart, put him back together again to stop a curse, and killed his ghost. Just Belmont, who in 1748 had to stop his idiot friend Maxim from bringing Dracula back early. This is why we only have one Belmont vampire hunter at a time. It gets competitive when you have partners. And of course, Richter Belmont, who stops Dracula's attempted harem in 1792, and was particularly good at turning mundane weapons and tools into screen-clearing nukes.
There we go.
But Richter was later mind-controlled by the necromancer Shaft in a ploy to raise Dracula again, having to be bailed out by Alucard. And I guess after that, Richter felt unworthy of his lineage, and he left the vampire killer and the duty of fighting Dracula to the Morris family and disappeared into obscurity. A sad end to a proud clan, but to be fair, the Belmonts were never really societally respected in their time, often alienated from society and holed up in their own communities, probably for being weirdly used to blood and eating garlic with every meal. But this also allowed them to develop closely guarded secret techniques with all sorts of weapons, from axes to daggers, boomerang and crosses, and low-key Belnades magic. But a counter-argument I imagine is, really? 6 guys and all they did was kill this one vampire? Believe me when I say that this is just a tip of the corpse.
How about you face Dracula and tell me how
they've slain millions of beasts from all corners of mythology. Skeletons and werewolves, gillmen and fleamen, chimeras and yugoloths. If you can imagine it, the Belmonts have killed it.
Hit him out.
And it's not like they were on vacation whenever Dracula was asleep. This family was always on the hunt. In fact, if you want an idea of how much the Belmonts protected Europe, just look at what disasters happen when they're not around. For starters, World War I. Yeah, according to Castlevania, Archduke Ferdinand's death was conspired by vampires, and now the world's in chaos. And the book Bram Stoker's Dracula also takes place in this part of the timeline. Quincy Morris probably had the vampire killer in his attic somewhere, and he just forgot to bring it. And groups like the Order of Ecclesia try to stop Dracula in the Belmont's absence, but actually end up resurrecting him again. It's a total shit show. So I don't know where Julius Belmont came from in 1999, but he took back the whip, and with Yoko Belnades and Japanese Alucard, he defeated Dracula for the last time, which was apparently such a shutout that they didn't even bother to show it in game. Now Julius is acting as a sort of friendly uncle/parole officer for Dracula's reincarnated soul in this Soma Cruz kid. And until Konami says otherwise, the Belmonts basically won. Anytime, any place, any monster. The Belmont of the Week is ready to punish evil. Get back in your graves, dead guys, or prepare to get whipped.
For darkness, I offer only defeat.
Nice.
We've had 3 hunters on this list so far that specialize in killing demons, not counting the Belmonts, though Dracula does admittedly step into demon territory a lot.
True.
But I've got one more for you, and in my opinion, the best in the category. Because while some demons come to despise Illidan or respect Dante, there's only one man that they truly fear. We don't know his real name, and he's been called many things.
Doomslayer!
With reverence, I choose to call him the Doomslayer.
Gotta rip a tear! Let's go!
Doomslayer was an absolute beast of a man
Or just
before
Doom
he
guys,
met
being
his first
sometimes
demon.
called.
Standing at 6 feet and 8 inches tall, the Slayer was a Marine on future Earth before he was dishonorably discharged for refusing to fire into a civilian crowd. He ended up taking a crap job with a base on Phobos, one of Mars's moons, which seems like a pretty boring post. Why do we even have a base out there? Well, it turns out that there's a portal to hell on the Red Planet, and soon this Marine is the last line of defense between Earth and the armies of the damned. Across his many appearances, it can be tough to nail down which of these games are supposed to follow the same Marine, but I can say for certain that Doom, Doom 2, Doom 64, Doom 2016, and Doom Eternal are all the same man from the same continuity.
Really?
He's also been playable in Quake Arena and Unreal Tournament, and Fortnite. And fun fact, his creators Tom Hall and John Romero agree that Doomslayer is the great-great-grandson of B.J. Blazkowicz from Wolfenstein, and the grandson of Billy Blaze, aka Commander Keen from those old DOS platformers. So his name might be William Blazkowicz V, Billy for short.
Could be.
Damn, his ancestors were fighting Nazis, and now he's fighting demons. And taking a page
Man,
from
Nazi Slayer
Illidan's
is
book,
Demon
you
Slayer.
don't stop your demon fight at the Hell Portal. You march your ass into that inferno and make sure that those fiery bastards wish that they never heard of humans. Devil will cry. As a shooter, Doom is the magnetic opposite of cover shooters like Gears of War.
Nope.
Doomslayer is extremely aggressive, out in the open at all times and running backwards while he unloads clip after clip into those cyber demons' faces.
I mean,
This
it's how
man
you get
does
your
not
health back.
crouch. If he needs to avoid
If
a
you
blast,
hide,
he'll
you're a
either
coward.
step to the side,
Otherwise-
run behind a wall, or just tank it with his legendary Praetor suit and kill the bastard before they can even think about firing again. At first he fought demons with conventional weaponry, guns, fists, the odd chainsaw, but as his battle got hotter, he upgraded his gear to include the super shotgun, the wrist-mounted Doom Blade, the plasma-powered Unmaker, the lightsaber-style Crucible, and the legendary BFG
baby.
9000. You know what it stands for.
Big
Let's make
fucking
a
gun.
comparison to another interstellar exterminator that's a runner-up
Hi,
for this
Samus.
list, Samus Aran. While she's solely responsible for the extinction of multiple genuses of alien parasites, she fell short on this list for her job title of Bounty Hunter. As often as
Fair.
she's hunting monsters, she's also fighting sentient combatants, mainly space pirates. And while she is quite introverted, she apparently has some sort of life outside of her missions, even if we never follow her home to see it. Doomslayer is all monster slaying all the time. The gaps of time between games, he's either still waging war across hellish dimensions, or he's
Or
forcibly put into hibernation. We know he had a family at some point, including a pet rabbit named Daisy, but they were all massacred by a secret demon counterattack in Doom 2, wiping away any shred of humanity he had left and leaving only a thirst for retribution. He'll still work with others for the sake of the fight, but every interaction and data log tells us that he's a single-minded killer. Anything that isn't killing demons is a waste of time. Not that he's dumb. If Doom 64 is to be believed, he was an engineer at one point and even made modifications to his own Praetor suit. But he barely speaks to anyone, and when he does, it's an incoherent grumble for vengeance.
I'm not picking up
What did you
words.
Ow!
In Doom 64, he returned to Hell to kill the so-called Mother of Demons, and close the portal behind him so he could forever be Hell's problem. The Mother of Demons' sister, the Resurrector, sent Doomslayer back to Earth, and what did he do? He came right back in and locked
killed them
himself
all.
in again. And when his body was recovered decades later in a sarcophagus by Samuel Hayden's scientists, he had already become part of the demon's cultural mythology as a harbinger of death. And Samuel himself was too afraid to wake him up until he needed some demon insurance. And apparently he's even been empowered by alien technology and holy power, And you know what? I barely noticed the difference. Doomslayer is simply a force of nature, the demon of demonkind, the monster hiding under devil children's beds. And if there's a more dedicated hunter of demons, damn, I don't want to meet them.
No kidding. Yeehaw. Yeah, you gotta love the music, too.
To reiterate a point from the intro, many video game heroes fight monsters, but for this list, I really wanted to focus on characters who hunt monsters, as a trade or a career or duty. This can sometimes overlap with just being a hero or a soldier. Doomslayer is as much a marine as he is a hunter. But these top 4 enter into a higher category, where their entire lifestyle depends on pursuing these creatures. They aren't mercenaries or marines or bounty hunters, they are monster hunters. And there's a lot of call for that in the town of Yharnam. In the backstory of Bloodborne, a school of researchers uncovered ancient ruins and evidence of the Eldritch Great Ones, higher beings whose power and intellect transcend our plane of existence. They even found samples of these deities referred to as Old Blood, which could then be used to heal previously untreatable ailments and might hold the key to humanity's next phase of evolution. Or it might start turning people into monsters. As the blood moon grows nearer, the streets of Yharnam become flooded with strange and foul beasts, and a call is made to volunteers to join the hunt. You are one of those volunteers.
hunter.
And may I say, you're looking pretty dapper. Seriously, there are no bad-looking armor options in this game. Everything has this Victorian Gothic aesthetic to it that, visually, best captures that Van Helsing vibe I was talking about earlier. Hunters use a variety of awesome weapons made by the Hunter's Workshop, most of which transform for different situations, like a short sword that slots into the blade of a claymore, or a mace that crackles with electricity. And there's a variety of firearms that you can keep in your offhand. But there is a dark side to being a hunter as well. It's a foregone conclusion that fighting the infected will lead to one's own exposure to the old blood, so to join the hunt is to accept that you'll likely become a monster yourself. In fact, when the pitchfork-wielding mobs see you, they just assume that you're already infected. And if you see another hunter like yourself out in the field, it's not a warm reunion. It's easier for both hunters to just assume that the other is compromised and leap into action against them. It's a lonely existence, and a confusing one. Father Gascoigne's the perfect example of a hunter who's killed too many, turning into a werewolf mid-battle, and this is probably the most standard boss fight. Past that, your opponents become gnarled horrors that defy explanation, or else great ones themselves. So yeah, my number 4 was going to be just the hunter. Any hunter you choose to build in Bloodborne. They're cool, they're formidable, and this game's more aggressive take on the Dark Souls combat system makes them a joy to play as. I love landing visceral attacks, just getting into a monster's business and ripping out whatever I can grab. Even crazier knowing how dangerous all this blood is that you're bathing in. I'm still leaning in that direction, but there's one hunter I want to give special attention to who isn't controlled by the player. You see, participants in the hunt will soon find themselves in Hunter's Dream, and it's exactly what it says on the tin, a dream world for hunters. Here you'll meet the founder of the Hunter's Workshop, Gehrman, the first hunter, comfortably retired in his wheelchair. He gives you the facilities to improve your weapons and utilize the Great One's runes to grow stronger. And from what we can tell, he's an incredible craftsman. His name shows up in the flavor text of many items, most of the weapons we can use were originally designed by him, and he even crafted the doll that helps you level up your stats, basing it on another hunter that he adored that honestly was too young for him. Yeah, not exactly my favorite thing about Gehrman. And as it turns out, he's the game's final boss. Well, depending on your choices. See, Gehrman's actually being held captive in this dream by the Great Ones, tasked with helping hunters on their way, allowing them to grow stronger before jumping back into the thick of things. And if a hunter has worked hard enough to satisfy the Great One, Gehrman can then reward the hunter by...
well, often
killing them? Well, okay, it looks like he's killing them, but really he's purging them from Hunter's Dream so that they can finally wake up the next morning after the hunt so that they can get on with their lives. Gehrman's done this for countless hunters before, as evidenced by the many, many gravestones around his house. So once you've completed your quest to murk another Great One's baby, Gehrman offers to retire you. This is arguably the best ending, but also the easiest to get, so screw that. Instead, we can refuse, forcing Gehrman out of his wheelchair to brandish his own hunter's weapon, and oh my god, that's the coolest one!
Yep, giant side.
Sorry, I just really love sides, especially transforming sides. Gehrman's far from the hardest boss in the game, especially if you're good at parrying, but it's so cool to see this game's take on a masterclass hunter. The fight starts out as your classic mirror match. He can use many of the same stance change skills and visceral techniques that you can. Then, in the last phase, he tries to tip the scales by drawing on some of the Great One's power. But what's so interesting about this is that while it looks like a duel to the death, it can also be seen as you and Gehrman trying to save each other. Gehrman's been here a long time, pretty much since the hunt began. Sometime when he's asleep, you can catch him crying for his old friend Lawrence to come and save him, which... yeah, sorry dude, I saw Lawrence earlier and that guy's not saving anybody. Oh. But if you can beat him, you can finally let him move on with his life, however much time he has left, while you now watch over the hunt. Or, to take it one step forward, if you've collected certain items throughout your adventure, you can then challenge the Great One itself who has been keeping this dream alive. And if you win, you become a Great One. The ending to Bloodborne basically depends on your final stance with Gehrman. You can either be his subordinate, his successor, or his superior, evolving yourself in a way that the scholars originally planned. I guess Lawrence was right, the old blood was the key. The hunted has become the hunter, and now is the one who manages the hunt. Not just the apex predator, but the architect of the predators. But only if you can overcome some serious bullshit. So for what you can overcome, and then what you can become, the Bloodborne Hunter takes the number 4 spot, with honorary mention to Gehrman. Rest well, old man. Maybe I'll see you on the other side someday.
Indeed. And probably another reason why I'm not going to be playing a lot of Souls games. I don't know if I want to... I got high blood pressure, thank you, but... pretty sure if I played that, it goes skyrocketing. Just saying. Well, anyway, Battle 3, let's see who's top of the list. I mean, we got through Dante Belmonts and the Hunters, so I wonder who's the top pick. Let's see.
This video was a bit of a mess in the rewrites, actually, and a big part of that was because of a late consideration. I mentioned back at number 10 that I originally had a Pokemon trainer on this list. Well, they got bumped off because I remembered Aloy from the Horizon games. Once again, wokeness is ruining Pokemon.
Shut up.
That was a joke.
Shut up.
Please understand that that was a joke.
Jeez.
So to put it simply, Aloy is a great hunter in a world where being a hunter would be particularly difficult. And to explain this, I first have to explain the world of Horizon Zero Dawn and its sequel, Horizon Forbidden West. So this world was exactly the same as our world once, but in the late 21st century, a tech mogul made 2 hilariously bad decisions.
Yeah.
Not bad on
Evil
their
AI
own,
and giant robots.
His company developed a way for robots to power themselves by recycling organic matter. Okay, that sounds great. But then he also wrote in AI to believe that efficient research, development, and mass production would be the top priority. This accidentally made killer robots, which would eat people to get the energy that they need to make more robots. Eons later, and society as we know it has passed from memory, and what humans are left live in small tribes, and the world is inhabited by giant robot versions of animals. Kinda makes sense that if AI were tasked to keep improving its monsters, it would follow the same track natural selection took and give us some similar designs. Robot tigers, robot alligators, robot antelope. The only difference is that robot tigers won't eat the robot antelope. Instead, the antelope will work as scouts and they'll all work together to munch down on any organic creatures in the area. So in the future, being a zoologist also requires you to know a bit of mechanical engineering. As for Aloy, she was an outcast from her tribe, the Nora. Actually, this is because she was cloned by an underground supercomputer using the DNA of an old scientist, and the tribefolk didn't know what to make of this immaculately conceptualized baby, but those details aren't important for this list. What is important is that she was taken in by her adoptive father, another outcast named Rost, who taught her the ways of the hunter, how to use the lay of the land to your advantage, how to handle a bow and a spear, how to make your own ammunition and medicine from the plants around you, and how to take down complicated metallic beasts. Unlike our ancestors, Aloy and Rost aren't hunting these monsters for sustenance. Not only is it important to thin the herds of infrared blade wolves, there's plenty of goods to be harvested from the toppled prey. And this grows into an incredible loadout for Aloy. Instead of making shivs from a buffalo's horns, she's making bombs from a robot's engine. She's painting her arrows with napalm and laying core traps that electrocute her victims. What I love about Aloy as a hunter is that things are so different, and yet they're really the same. Ever since the invention of agriculture allowed humans to stop migrating, any humans that continue to hunt or gather live with one foot in modern civilization and another in the past, continuing to hone the skills that, for many people, are no longer needed, but become more impressive with each passing generation. The bigger the cities get, the more specialized you have to be to leave those cities and be a tracker, which I'd say is the core of Aloy's function as a character. She's not recognized as a full-fledged member of the Nora, but when she has a chance to prove her worth, she runs circles around the more sheltered Nora gatherers. She later visits larger civilizations, such as the Aztec-like nation of Meridian, and while she'll never pass for a royal, her abilities as a monster hunter see her involved in plots around the highest seat of power. And when a leftover AI threatens to wipe out humanity again, Aloy's able to fight back these post-industrial war machines with the same approach she takes towards the Animalian automatons. Some say Aloy's a Mary Sue with Chosen One syndrome because of her being a clone of a VIP. I'll let you decide how you feel about that plot point, but as far as being a hunter goes, that's all Aloy's hard work.
True.
If anything, she's working against her scientist genetics to become a super techno ranger. The only advantage she has is maybe finding the focus, a Bluetooth heads-up display that helps Aloy sift through visual information. That comes in handy, but it's certainly not doing the work for her. There's also naysayers to this game's combat, which, again, if it's not your thing, it's not your thing.
True.
Mainly, it's these giant monsters who have a lot of health and hit like a truck because, well,
Again,
they are
robots versus humans,
It sucks
so
dodge
good
rolling
luck.
for 20 minutes, only to get 2 shots and then a tail sweep. But it's clear to me that these games don't want you to go in guns blazing like some of the hack and slash beat 'em ups that we've seen previously. Instead,
you're just a
Horizon
human
wants you to
facing
fight
off
like a
against-
hunter. If you see your prey first, scan them with focus, identify their weaknesses, craft some appropriate arrows, stealth in, and lay some traps before getting its attention, and then you can turn those 20 minutes of dodging into 2 minutes of fantastical explosions. And it feels amazing when you perform a perfect kill. The only reason for me keeping Aloy at number 3 is maybe she has too many other things going on outside of monster hunting. It's not the only thing that she does. But even so, she's a hunter through and through. And I think the other entries on this list would be shocked by some of the abominations that she's taken down.
Amen to that. Especially with those giant robots. And I don't think I could take them off. Out, yummy.
Aloy's great for, you know, a normal human being. But you can't quite compete with a literal superhuman with a
The Witcher.
century of
Dr.
experience under his belt.
Do the Witcher.
That's right, we're talking about the Witcher himself, Geralt of Rivia. Hello?
Yellow.
The countdown police?
Huh?
What did I do? Characters must originate from a video game. Oh, right. The Witcher was a book series first.
God damn it.
Okay, hear me out on this. The Witcher is a fantasy novel series by Polish author Andrzej Sapkowski, and I greatly apologize if I butchered that pronunciation. These novels introduce Geralt and his adventures as a Witcher. What's a Witcher? Well, in this fantasy world, people who join this one organization can train to become expert fighters, have their bodies altered by magic and alchemy, and become essentially a Captain America-style super soldier with improved strength, speed, endurance, mental processing, a longer lifespan, and the ability to use magical signs, all with the goal of fighting supernatural monsters. Despite this noble pursuit, though, Witchers are often seen as untrustworthy sellswords by the common folk, some even calling them monsters themselves, and they usually struggle to scrape together a living. But again, in the books, the Witcher trilogy of RPGs is set after the books, with Geralt on a new adventure in a new land with some returning characters, though as the series goes on, some of the details of people's backstories begin to contradict the books in a way that suggests that the games are their own canon. More critically, while it still suggests that Witchers are disrespected in cities, Geralt's been turned from a somewhat melancholy down-on-his-luck hunter to the world's #1 badass. The guy has no issues making a living. There's a monster around every corner lately, and if people aren't begging Geralt to hunt them, they're trying to get in his pants. Sapkowski himself stated that he's disappointed with the changes to Geralt in particular, and it's hard to look at this version of him and not think video game character.
True.
So while this does greatly push my video game origin
Though I'm
rule,
not sure
I'm going
I'll
with it
gonna
anyway.
be liking that.
And besides, it's not unlike me counting Dracula from Castlevania as a different character from Romanian history or Bram Stoker's novel as any different.
True.
And look, I'm not excited for the floodgate this might open for future countdowns. I don't want to have to start considering King Mickey for sword wielders or Arkham's Batman for martial artists. But those characters, I would say, are pre-existing figures with a different skin. Whereas video game
True.
Geralt is more a reimagining based on an existing character, one that transcends the original to the point where it's something new. So with that justification out of the way, let's get into this.
Yeah, that does make
Geralt is an
sense.
imposing presence with his long ivory hair, powerful frame, and 2 broadswords adorning his back. And no, he's not dual-wielding. One is made of standard steel, while the other is forged with silver for taking on more supernatural threats,
One for
including
human, one for
spectral
monsters.
ghosts
Nice.
and cursed lycanthropes. Either way, Geralt's a world-class swordsman, able to shift between multiple styles and stances depending on the situation. There's something graceful, almost dance-like about the way he spins his blade through enemies, weaving between the reach of multiple villains at once like a leaf in the wind.
Nice.
He's also got a crossbow for taking down flyers, which he can fire one-handed, naturally, and if he's ever weaponless, he can still outpunch any man in hand-to-hand combat. Plenty of side quests to prove that.
True.
And then there's the aforementioned magic signs, which might be the most power crept detail from their book counterparts. These were unreliable for the original Geralt, but video game Geralt is firing off ignis like there's no tomorrow. Gotta be careful with the potions Geralt makes though, as they have a natural toxicity that can hurt Geralt if he drinks too many in quick succession, but I hardly ever had a problem with that. Again, unlike book Geralt. So that's the
Slow her
resume,
down.
but what's the job? Well, like our past 2 entries, Geralt's very much in the business of hunting. Many of his side quests taking the form of contracts to take down particular monsters. It's not always as simple as going to the right place either. Sometimes Geralt needs to sleuth out his prey, be it in the wilderness or in more urban areas for monsters that like to pose as humans. There are 90 bosses in The Witcher 3 alone. And to be fair, many of those are normal humans with buddies or reskins of certain monsters, but you can't tell me that there isn't variety. You got wraiths, vampires, succubi, trolls, giants, wyverns, griffins, elementals, golems, djinn. You could just throw the whole D&D monster manual at Geralt, and he'll show you his future trophy collection checklist. He took down a golden dragon in Witcher 2. In Witcher 3, Geralt takes on the Wild Hunt, an armada of spectral riders that terrorize the skies. And from there, buy the DLC, hop into the Land of the Thousand Fables, and start killing famous fairy tales. The Big Bad Wolf, the Wicked Witch, the Toad Prince, the 3 bears, the 3 pigs. Yeah,
Really?
don't
The
laugh.
pigs?
Those are like the hardest one. But
Really?
not too hard for Geralt of Rivia.
Pigs?
And if all this seems a little overblown, that's
Yeah, I
just
gotta
what
play
my
The
research
Witcher.
turned up. To make sure I didn't miss anything, I checked some generic fan wikis about Geralt, and I swear they all sound like mid-2000s Chuck Norris facts. Geralt once knocked out a bear with a single punch. He has such refined senses that he can hear elite elven assassins breathing in the trees. He killed a giant with a trophy hook. And under weaknesses? Yeah, those aforementioned potions that poison people, they poison him too. Big whoop. And, oh, okay, he boasts a lot, which sometimes gets him into trouble with people that he easily kills. I
Pretty
hate
much.
to say it, but it's not boasting if it's fucking true. Witchers are already feared because they're too capable, and this guy is the most accomplished Witcher to ever live. If I can't bend my rule for that, the rule's gonna break. It might be the reason that he's only at number 2, but at the end of the day, that just saves the top spot for my favorite entry anyway.
Is that right?
Nice sparring with you. Thanks.
Definitely pops the coin with this guy. Number 1?
Over the last 10 years, one video game series has infiltrated my life more than any other, making itself at times like a weekly routine. And
True.
I'll give
Yeah.
you a hint.
It's
That
Monster
series
Hunter.
name is the title of this video. Or to use a hokey reasoning that I was avoiding back in the Bloodborne entry, video game's best monster hunter
Is us.
is you.
Woohoo!
This may seem like an obvious conclusion to the list, but it wasn't
on.
as obvious to me when I started writing.
in the name,
Again,
Monster
my
Hunter.
inspiration was the Van Helsing type, not a fantasy setting armored warrior like Capcom's titular Avatar. But if you make a business out of slaying dragons and dinos, I think that qualifies for the list. And
True.
Monster Hunter as a series gets deeper into the details of monster hunting more than any other video game. I mean, you would hope so, right? First, let's talk about the world around Monster Hunter.
Right.
In the many developer interviews about the series, it's been shared how this was originally going to be a much more sword and sorcery themed series. Very medieval, very European. Perhaps not very demure, but anyway. During the planning phase, a team put together a concept video of a group of hunters setting a trap for a great beast. And it wasn't the knightly warriors or the draconic target that captured the devs' imaginations, but the trap laying itself. The way that the hunters had to observe the monster's weight and movement to set a trap perfectly. It made this dragon feel like a creature that wasn't just put in there to terrorize the player. This led to a concept that contributed to Monster Hunter's now unique sense of world building, fantastical ecology. Basically, when Capcom designs a monster, they're asking themselves how that monster exists in this environment and how the environment responds. Even the more fanciful creatures. Take Zinogre, for example. How does this giant lupine wyvern shoot lightning? Well, it formed a symbiotic relationship to these thunderbugs, whose wings generate a small electric field. Capcom doesn't just make fierce predators, but also unassuming herbivores, insects, and plant life that you can see interacting with each other. As the hunter, it's your job to learn this ecology and work your way into and up the food chain, starting with the unassuming Kelby, up through the poisonous Pukei-Pukeis, and then the fearsome Anjanats, and eventually the ferocious Elder Dragons. All the while, your progress is marked by the monster parts that you can use to forge into armor sets, taking on the appearance and the presence of the land's apex predator. It's extremely satisfying, but easier said than done. Monster Hunter is not an easy game, even with the many options of weapons at your disposal. And
Or
those
being with a rape
weapons
party.
are
Good luck.
incredible. From the dependable sword and shield to the long-ranged bow, or the hammer that you'll swear is too heavy at first until you get your first perfectly timed swing on a charging Tigrex. There is so much more to the hunt
Nice.
than fighting. First, you gotta track it. Okay, well, first, you gotta eat. Recently, Delicious in Dungeon got really popular for realistically portraying the importance of nutrition on these kinds of excursions. That show is amazing. But hey, Monster Hunter has been
Did that
stressing that
first
for
with-
years. Once you have a full
Ta-da!
belly and know what beastie you're looking for, you have to march through the environment and accrue knowledge. Different games have different systems for tracking, and without them, you could waste all day on a wild Kuluyaku chase with nothing to show for it. Monster Hunter World's Scout Flies, Rise's Kohoots, and the older game's Paintballs, which you'd use if a monster tried to give you the slip. Annoying as hell, but certainly immersive.
Could be worse.
Like Alloy, before you charge in, you might want to do some setup and identify key targets on the body. Who knows, you might be able to break off a horn or a fang and lower its attack capabilities. Also, check if it has an elemental attack so that you can wear suitable protection. Take some strength enhancing tonics, and now you can get to the fighting. Mechanically, there's more than enough to prove that this game's Monster Hunter is a dedicated Venator. But Monster Hunter has more to say thematically about this practice than just the hunter has become the hunted. There is a depth to this series and to the Monster Hunter itself that I'd like to explore. Mainly, their role in this game's society. Monster Hunter takes us back to an earlier point in human civilization where man lived in fear of beasts. Like, yeah, I would be scared too if I were staring down a mountain lion. And when was the last time you couldn't sleep because a wolf might get into your house? In Monster Hunter, that was yesterday for these people. And that wolf was a Lunagaron. These games take place in vulnerable, albeit thriving cities bordering stretches of unexplored wilderness. And without the constant presence of a hunter, humanity may soon be overrun by wings and fangs. There's a somewhat manifest destiny attitude in getting out there and giving those dinosaurs the boot. But many storylines also emphasize ethical hunting. Going back to what I said at the very beginning with Octopath's huntresses. Sometimes overpopulation of certain animals isn't just endangering humans, but other animals. This electrokinetic unicorn Kirin may look untouchable, but then there's Rajang the gorilla tar that eats Kirin's horn to go Super Saiyan. I like fighting them both, but we don't want either of them to go extinct. Sometimes we have to step in and even the scales. Sometimes you need to capture a monster and relocate it rather than killing it. Sometimes you just need to collect samples so that you can do some research and gain a better understanding of that monster. Then there's the Elder Dragons, beings that shape the very ecosystem with power over the elements, natural disasters in reptilian form that you can fight to prevent untold destruction to the town, and nature. Velkhana causes blizzards, Lagiacris brings tsunamis, Kushala is dropping hurricanes like they're going out of style. Truly, this is the peak of monster hunting, fighting nature incarnate. Except it's not, because nature never stops evolving, and you have to evolve with it. The top bosses of these worlds compare to high challenge rating D&D monsters, far above anything Will is seen challenging. In other games, it's people with agendas to take over nature that the heroes have to stop, But in this world, the power to overcome these forces requires the skills of an unparalleled hunter. So to top off this entry, here are a few more monsters that best illustrate what a top-tier monster hunter can contend with. There's Nergigante and Deviljho, who mostly leave humans alone, but you have to stop them from hunting the Elder Dragons to extinction.
Really?
There are several beasts you domesticate and work alongside, including the Palamute in Monster Hunter Rise, who may look like a puppy but is actually a type of wyvern, and there's also the Psychrit in the upcoming Monster Hunter Wilds, and these big bugs that you can summon with the Insect Glaive. Hell, there's the whole Monster Hunter Story sub-series that turns Monster Hunter into straight-up Pokemon. Then there's the beasts with such high intelligence that hunting them feels personal. Fatalis, a dragon who despises all hunters and wages war from an abandoned castle like a supervillain. Gormagala, who's not only spreading the frenzy virus, but after you beat them, comes back as Shigaru Magala in what I can only describe as a revenge arc. And one of my favorite examples, Atal Ka. It sees you taking monster parts to power yourself up and says, hey, you know what? That's a good idea. I'm gonna power myself up with human inventions. Say hello to my fucking mech! Like, yeah, all the hunters on this list have some impressive quarries, but how many of them are so good at their job that they have arch nemesis? This is like Captain Ahab and Moby Dick, except one-sided in the hunter's favor. Maybe it's generic, but the Monster Hunter is known only as the Monster Hunter because they're emblematic of that job. And a perfect example of a warrior who devotes themselves to fighting the fantastical by immersing themselves in the fantastical. Through their efforts, through your efforts, society, nature, and myth all shift around you and your tales of glorious takedowns. And if that's not a sign of a great monster hunter, I don't know what is. I'm the Green Scorpion, and I'd like to thank you all, and perhaps give a bit of credit to myself, for making this iconic figure video game's #1 monster hunter. Happy Halloween, everyone. And October may have passed, but that doesn't mean that the spooky season is over just yet. Because mischief rises like bread in the oven. Join us next time as we enter the Witch's Coven.
Ooh, witches. Okay, we'll be seeing witches soon. This is gonna be interesting. Now I really want to play Monster Hunter. Anyone else? What do you guys think? Would you play it? Well, until next time, thanks for watching. See ya!